councillors at Auschwitz. Just entering the main door. Debbie.
And a few words of introduction before we enter the former camp. The place everybody knows as Auschwitz was the largest Nazi concentration camp set up by them in 1940. Since 1942, Auschwitz was a death camp for European Jews with its gas chambers, which were built specially to kill Jewish people. But initially, Auschwitz was going to be only a concentration camp. To remind you, the original aim of sending people to the concentration camps was isolation of Hitler's opponents. The first such camps were set up in Germany itself years before the war started. The first of them, Dachau, was set up in 1933. It's 6 years before the war. So when the war started. To remind you, on the 1st of September 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland. 2 weeks later, the Soviets did the same. Both of them did not accept Poland as the independent state, and both of them made their own people believe they were fighting for the land. For almost 1 month, Poland was fighting against both of them, waiting for help which Poland had promised. Because help did not come, Poland surrendered and vanished. I wouldn't like you to think that there was someone in this part of Europe to make decisions in the names of Polish people. There was no Poland. It was the only European state which did not exist in Nazi time. I mean, half of Poland was incorporated into Nazi Germany, half of Poland was incorporated into Soviet Russia. And in that part of Poland, which was controlled by the Germans, soon after the war started, the Germans started looking for the best place to have some Polish troublemakers kept in isolation from the rest of Polish society. People who were involved in resistance, suspected of being involved, high-educated Poles, the clergymen, were the first prisoners of Auschwitz concentration camp. And the answer for the question why they chose Auschwitz, the town of Auschwitz, to have the camp situated in it is very simple. Those brick buildings behind the main entrance stood here when the war began. It was Polish army camp before the war. They surrounded the barracks with electrified fence and the camp was ready. And then for 2 years, Auschwitz was a concentration camp. Almost everyone who was sent to Auschwitz at that time was Polish, non-Jewish. I wouldn't like you to miss, people who lived in Europe knew that the concentration camps existed. What I mean, everyone who was involved in resistance awaited to be arrested by Gestapo, German state police, secret state police. Arrested by Gestapo, first were sent to the jails. In the jails, after interrogation, it was decided if a person was going to be released, executed, or sent to one of the concentration camps. It was a punishment to be sent to the concentration camp. If you had a relative sent to the concentration camp and killed in such camp, they made you know about it. Making people know was the way to have them terrified. They made you know your father, your grandfather died of tuberculosis, heart attack, pneumonia. They made you know if you paid 10 Deutschmarks, his ash would have been sent to you. You paid for somebody's ash taken from one of the other. So they even made people know that those who were killed in the concentration camps were burned. People knew about burning in the camps. They knew about hunger, experiments, punishments, executions. What they found unbelievable living in Europe at that time was not the system of the concentration camps, but the system of death camps. Death camps had the gas chambers, and it was new. Never in the history of mankind people were killed in the gas chambers. and they had the right not to believe in such stories. Out of 1,000 various camps Nazi Germany set up in Europe, only 6 were death camps. Auschwitz, Majdanek, Treblinka, Sobibór, Bełżec and Chełmno. The rest of the camps in Europe were concentration, labor, transit or subcamps. You already know Auschwitz had 2 functions. Since 1942 it had 2 functions. It was still a concentration camp for the prisoners of various nationalities, origin and religion, and it was a death camp for European Jews with its gas chambers. So in 1942 they started killing people in the gas chambers. The situation of all Jews who were sent to Auschwitz was exceptional in terms most of them did not even enter the camp. Most of the Jews who were sent to Auschwitz went to the gas chambers at once. The Germans were taking them to the camp only when there was more work to be done, and they did not have enough prisoners in the camp. You could be young, strong and healthy, and being Jewish, being sent to Auschwitz in time they had no work for you, you would have been killed in the gas chamber. It means if they had no work at all, we wouldn't have any Jewish survivors of Auschwitz. All of them would have been killed in the gas chambers right after they arrived. Initially, they did not expect the Jews to enter the camp at all. They expected all of them to be killed in the gas chambers at once. Because in the middle of the war, most of the concentration camps became source of labor for the Germans. It saved some of the Jews from being killed in the gas chambers at once. At any time during our tour, I will be talking about the gas chambers at Auschwitz, and one of them we're going to see at the end of our tour here. I will be talking about Jewish people. Almost everyone who was killed in the gas chambers at Auschwitz was Jewish. At any time during our tour, I will be talking about Auschwitz as a concentration camp. At any time during our tour, I will say the prisoners. I mean those who were Jewish and those who were non-Jewish. Non-Jewish Polish, Soviets, the Gypsies and political prisoners of other nationalities. And you're going to learn during our tour the fate of those who were the prisoners of Auschwitz was not much better than the fate of those who were killed in the gas chambers at once. What you find written above the main entrance, it's written in German, means work brings freedom, makes you free. These brick buildings were the barracks for the prisoners. They looked quite solid because they were not built on purpose. It was Polish army camp before the war. In the wartime, each of them had to be enough for at least 700 people, up to 1,000. And the prisoners slept in them. Very early in the morning, at about 4 or 5 a.m., all prisoners had to leave the barracks even if they had nothing to do outside. Today, many of them are the museum pavilions with exhibits, although some of them have remained intact. During our tour, I'm going to show you block number 11, in which nothing has been changed since the end of the war. In block number 11, you're going to see the way all of these buildings looked like 6 years ago when Auschwitz was liberated by the Soviets. And now the buildings at your back. The brick one was built, the wooden ones were the camp workshops. The one by the entrance was the manager's office. And the kitchen on my left. The building with many chimneys sticking from the roof. And one of the easiest ways to survive Auschwitz was work in the kitchen. Don't miss the picture showing us the camp orchestra. They were also the camp prisoners. Another good way to survive Auschwitz. The survivors of Auschwitz say in the camp everything depended on your luck. If they made you to build the camp, if you relied only on the prisoners' diet, you could not survive Auschwitz. The survivors of Auschwitz come from the kitchens, laundries, registration buildings, administration barracks, the camp workshops, the warehouses, the factories situated nearby. Most of musicians survived the camp too. First, they made them to keep the march tempo for the prisoners who were going to work and who were coming back. Then they made them to make impression of happiness when a new transport of people arrived at the camp.
weiter there, that guy's flowing.
Nie, prosto chyba. Tak widzę, że wycieczki prowadzą, nie?
Ale tam chyba jest ten. Ściana.
Tak? No to pójdziemy, tak? Nie.
Sorry?
Też nie będzie.
A poziom, nie, poziom wycenia.
Uh, 75,000 Poles were killed in Auschwitz, 21,000 Gypsies, 15,000 Soviets, and over 20,000 political prisoners of other nationalities. Although so many were killed, there are no graves at Auschwitz. Those who were killed were not buried but burned. Even today, and we realize working at the Museum of Auschwitz, most of the people abroad like you comes rather because Auschwitz is infamous as a death camp for European Jews. And no one denies the fact that most of those were killed. But I wouldn't like you to miss, there was no another camp in the whole Europe in which there were so many Jewish people killed, in which men were separated from women. They are standing in the middle of something what looks like a very typical labor camp, and to remind you, they had already seen the camp, so it's nothing unusual for them to see the barracks. And they are told after, and this is the way the largest ones look like. In front of you, under the ground level, they are dressing the changing room. They were told about shower, so first they had to undress. We see them going down. Mothers with small children, pregnant women, sick, old, people with disabilities. They made them to leave everything they brought with them. They were asked to remember the numbers of the hooks on which the clothing was hung on. They asked them to tie the shoes. They wanted to make them believe they were coming back. When they were naked, they made them to go right into the second underground room. It was the gas chamber, but it looked like a real bathroom. They could see showers above the heads, fake showers. But don't miss, the gas chamber was much smaller than the changing room, and the size of the gas chamber made the last ones entering the gas chamber knew they were going to die. They could see showers above their heads, but they could not move because there were so many of them present. And some of them tried to fight back. It's not easy to fight back against machine guns when you are naked. They were naked. The strong ones were taken to the camp. We are talking about mothers with small children, pregnant women, sick, old, people with disabilities. Most of them were singing or praying. The door was closed. Through small chimneys in the ceiling, they dropped the poison. They call it Cyclone B. And after 5-10 minutes, everybody was dead. At least 1,000 people. Then they were waiting till half an hour to make sure they were dead. The gas chamber was ventilated, the door was open, and the bodies were taken up to the ovens. And it was the prisoners' work. They always made the prisoners to work with those who were dead. So it could have been your work if you were taken to the camp, if you were Jewish. Because they always made Jewish prisoners to do it. They had to take dead bodies, dead people to the ovens. They had to remove gold teeth, shave women's hair, search corpses for valuables hidden in private parts, and burn them. Not them, the prisoners had to do it. The ovens at Auschwitz to have the bodies disposed. TOPF is the family name. Top and the Sons from Erfurt in Germany built the ovens. And it comes from their records. In June of 1943, the ovens that company built could burn over 4,700 corpses a day. And it is what made Auschwitz ovens exceptional, their capacity. Nowhere else they built the ovens to have 4,700 corpses cremated in 24 hours. But it does not mean that day after day so many people were killed at Auschwitz. There is no approximate number how many a day. If it was not enough, it was supposed to do. It shows burning the bodies out of the crematories. And here is another picture of prisoners. And it shows women already naked on the way to one of the gas chambers. gas in Germany which produced Cyclone B, the poison they dropped into the gas chambers at Auschwitz. Never before Auschwitz Cyclone B was used to kill people. They had no experience. The first experiment lasted 2 days. People were suffocating in 48 hours. The second one lasted 2 hours. Since the third one, everything became more calculated. It lasted 5-10 minutes. The camp commandant testified after the war 10-12 such cans had to be opened. They opened the cans, and what they dropped into the gas chambers at Auschwitz was such rocks. So it wasn't gas which was pumped into the gas chamber. Dangerous. Looking at this herd, it's a real human herd. You should try to see over 40,000 people. It comes from over 40,000 people. There are still traces of cyanide in it. It was shaved when they were dead. It comes from the victims of the gas chambers, the last victims. Most of human hair before the liberation was shipped to Germany to be turned into such textile. It was found in German factories soon after the war was over. The scientists from Jagiellonia University from Krakow in Poland proved it was human hair used in its production. In Nazi time it was used for stiffening and warming, in the suits, in the uniforms, but it could have been used in very many other ways too. The net behind the glasses was also made of human hair. The picture shows us both parts of Auschwitz camp. It shows us the railway lines. For most of the time, the trains bringing the Jews to Auschwitz did not enter any part of the camp. They stopped between the camps. And this was the camp commandant meant, saying one of the main reasons Auschwitz was appointed as a death camp for European Jews was its good railway connection with the rest of Europe. Till spring of 1944, they spent no money to build the
Debbie.
I'd like to ask you to remember it comes from the end of the camp, so it's a very small fraction of this what passed through the camp. But the most important is to remember about people, to remember each item symbolizes a person, to remember it used to be somebody's life. And let's go to see more. What you see was either not good enough to be sent to Germany or they had no time to do it. But in everything they were bringing with them, they expected something hidden. Dirty shoes, dirty clothing, artificial limbs, it was all searched for money, diamonds, hidden in them. In a moment we're going to see very many suitcases with people's names on them. I would like you to list the dates of birth written by the names. In case of the same names for identification, they wrote the dates of birth down. People whose names you find written on the suitcases were sent to Auschwitz towards the end of 1944, Jewish names. Most of them came from the ghetto in Terezin, by Prague in Czech Republic. They don't miss the dates of birth like 1932, 1936. Towards the end of 1944, those were 2, 5, 7, 10, 12 years old children, killed in the gas chamber at once.
Eu já vi uns pezinhos pequenininhos.
Auschwitz concentration camp, before they went to the barracks, they said the registration was very precise in keeping records of those destinations. The registration buildings, they belong to the state away, so not only those who live in the industrial, but those who did not start anything of the state. They left them there, they were going to the partners for the prisoners to even members of the same families could not recognize themselves. They made them look the same, but they wanted to know about them they knew. Those who were Jewish had the stars on them. Those who were not Jewish, the triangles.
So most of Jewish people when went to gas chambers immediately were not registered as Auschwitz, and it was at the same time a concentration camp with various nationalities, most Polish, and as you see,
wherever you are, it's very easy to recognize those who survived Auschwitz. They are the only ones with the camp numbers. Most of them had the numbers until they left France, but as you see, no. They had shown on each piece of the picture, and in all of them, represented a different number given, but also a number. On each piece of the clothing, the same number, and by the number, we remind the star of the Jewish, of the triangle, if you were not Jewish. For political prisoners, the triangle was red. For the Jews is black, Jehovah's Witnesses violet, homosexuals pink, criminals green. And if they sent you to one of the concentration camps, you have to pick one of the two. If you were non-Jewish, non-Jewish, Jehovah's Witness, homosexual. Most of the movies, the Jews had yellow stars given. And in the same movies, unfortunately, they usually show Jewish prisoners of the concentration camps with yellow stars. In the concentration camps, they did not have yellow stars. Yellow stars were given in the ghettos. In the concentration camps, the stars composed of two triangles. One was yellow, one was red. Red for political prisoners. So according to German records, those Jewish prisoners who ended up in the concentration camps were political prisoners. None of them survived Auschwitz. The most important for you are the dates you find the dates start from German records. If the simplest way to make know the fate of those who were the prisoners of Auschwitz was not much better than the fate of those who were the prisoners. Today, when she was sent to the camp, today, Mount and Vivian
Mengele was never captured, so they were captured. The Ukrainian news here escaped first largely Finland, and realized he was looking for his training names, addresses, and countries, until he reached Brazil. That's where he died in 1970.
I would like you to miss a few numbers here. There's an estimated number of children and youth deported to the camp, younger than 15. Out of this number, 22,000 were taken to the camp, which is less than 10%. More than 200,000 children, youth, went to the gas chambers at once. And out of this number, 650 were liberated by the state. Although adults tried to help them as much as they could, most of them did not survive. Those were teenagers taken to the camp for war. If they were Jewish, they had the stars on their uniforms. If they were non-Jewish, the triangles. And they were dangerous political prisoners. Mirosław Kubik, Czech, was 16 years old when in 1979 in Brazil, Dr. Mengele drowned by accident swimming in the ocean. To remind you, in December of 1942, the Allies promised to punish those who committed the crimes in occupied Poland. Out of 7,000 SS men who passed through Auschwitz, 800 were prisoners. It's 10%.
Era molto fortunata, non era.
jails, it was decided if they were going to be released, executed, or sent to one of the concentration camps. Those who were found guilty and sentenced to death to be executed were often sent straight to the concentration camps to be executed on the side of the camps, so outsiders. If the jails were overcrowded, arrested by Gestapo were often sent straight to the concentration camps, and on the side of the concentration camps it was decided about their fate. By the entrance in block number 11 you're gonna see the courtroom. The summary court had sessions at Auschwitz once a month. One session lasted 2 hours. During one session, more than 200 death sentences were given. It wasn't even a minute for a single case. People were found guilty and sentenced to death for listening to BBC, for example. You realize there was no Poland, so there was German law in occupied Poland, which forbade people to listen to BBC. People had their radios confiscated. If Gestapo found radio at your home, you were accused of listening to BBC, and every single lawyer of German nationality had the right to find you guilty and sentence you to death. They were also bringing hostages to the camp. People were arrested during roundups, men, women, and the children. They were sent to the concentration camps, and they made them to wait for the execution. If any high-ranking officer was shot by Polish resistance, they were called out of the barracks, executed, and then people in their town were informed about it, which was the way to have people terrified. More than 5,000 people were shot at the end of this yard. The wall itself is not original. The survivors testify about the way it looked like. To have people humiliated, they made them to undress before the execution. They were naked, standing against the wall. They had to face the wall. Most of them were shot in the back of their heads. Many of them refused to face the wall. Many of them were singing national anthem before the execution. The Germans did not want the rest of the prisoners to see it. In all of the camps, they wanted to break the prisoners down. They did not want them to see somebody singing national anthem before death. The execution yard was surrounded by the brick walls. The windows of block number 11 and 10 were specially boarded up. It was an experimental barrack. In block number 10, they experimented on women. They experimented with sterilization. When experiments were finished, they could work for them, but they could not be pregnant anymore. It comes from German records using Dr. Klauberg's method. Through injection into oviducts, one doctor could sterilize 1,000 women a day. It's a very original building. Nothing has been changed in it since the end of the war. We are going back the same way, so there is no need to go from one side of the corridor to another. There's all these decorations on the walls, and obviously it wasn't the prisoner's idea to beautify the barracks. Here's the way most of the barracks in this part of Auschwitz looked like. The survivors of Auschwitz I, which we are visiting right now, most of them remember sleeping on 3-level beds, each level of the although some of them testified till the end, they made them to sleep on the floor. I would like to miss the picture in this room. Besides assessment, in case of Auschwitz, most of them were the Germans and Austrians. They were specially trained to believe every single person who was sent to Auschwitz was the enemy of the German state. The enemy deserved to be punished. They never stayed with the prisoners in the same barracks. Block number 11 was an exception. It was the only barrack with SS men on duty. You could see the SS men room by the entrance. They were the ones who executed the prisoners between block number 10 and 11. To the supervisors, who were the prisoners. To remind you, the first concentration camp, Dachau, was set up 6 years of their lives. Instead, they were sending them to the concentration camps, and they had power given over the rest of the prisoners, but only first. Towards the end of the camp, most of the supervisors were the regular prisoners, and they behaved exactly the way the Germans expected. and they were hated by the rest of the prisoners who were with them in the camp. In the testimonies of Auschwitz survivors, you find them called as Blockältesters or the capos. They were responsible for keeping order in the blocks and at work. The washrooms, which in block number 11 were also the undressing rooms for those who were going to be executed. One for women, one for the men, and then naked they were led to the execution. On the left-hand side, please, and with us. Identical in size. In the cells, they kept prisoners who tried to escape from Auschwitz, who were suspected of trying to escape, who tried to have a contact with the civilians, who were smuggling into the camp medicines, food, dynamite, gunpowder. So it was a punishment for the prisoners of Auschwitz to be taken to the basement of block number 11. In most of the cells which you're going to see, they were waiting for their death. They could have been shot, hanged. You're going to see starvation cells. You're going to see dark cells, no lights, window. They were dying of suffocation. Because the corridors are very narrow, I would like to ask you to go around them in a single file on your left hand side.
Chelsea.
Pay attention to the police graphic. Be lazy. But in the moment, in cell number 21, there are some drawings of the prisoners left, and we believe to be made with the fingernails. The original ones are behind the glasses. All of the ones around you are the tourists. And at the end of the next corridor, in a moment you're going to see the cells in which the prisoners had to stand up for punishment. They had 4 such cells at the back of the corridor, each of them for 4 people, so 16 prisoners altogether. It was yard by yard inside the cell, 90 by 90 centimeters. To enter the cell, you had to be on your knees. They had to crawl in, 4 people in each of them at night. In the morning, sent to work. In the evening, coming back.
Here you see the starvation and suffocation cells. Please keep to the left-hand side after the corridor here.
After block number 11. He's arrived because he didn't have to work anymore. I mean the prisoners, the other colleague prisoners, were hiding him. This killing of people with Cyclone B took place in the basement of this building. So once it was used as the gas chamber, only once. It was time they had no Jewish prisoners in the camp yet, so they took some Soviets and Poles. They closed them in the basement of block number 11. They dropped the poison. After 24 hours, they opened the door, and they found all of them still living. Remember, they had no experience. Never before Auschwitz, Cyclone B was used to kill people. They were suffocating in 48 hours. And now it's time to see the real gas chamber. We're gonna see. The building was the kitchen. You see the gallows, the post, and the railway line. We are almost in the middle of the former camp by the rollers square. The yard at your back was not enough for 20,000 people who could have been here at the time. So during the roll calls, they kept the prisoners standing in front of their own barracks along the roads. Once in the morning, once in the evening. There were the roll calls in the history of Auschwitz, which lasted 5 hours, 10 hours. The longest one lasted 19 hours. They made the prisoners to stand up in front of their own blocks because of one, for 19 hours because of one who had escaped. Collective responsibility, remember. On another occasion, when 3 prisoners escaped, they selected 12 and they hanged them in the gallows in front of the kitchen. In summer of 1941, when a prisoner escaped, they selected 10 to be starved in the basement of block number 11. Those who were chosen knew what awaited them. One of them started crying, he wanted to leave. Another one, not selected, stepped ahead, and he told the assessment he wanted to take the place of a prisoner who was crying. They replaced them. The one who was crying survived Auschwitz. He died 10 years ago. The one who took his place with 9 others was closed in the basement of block number 11, in cell number 18, which you have seen opened to start. After 2 weeks he was still living, and then they poisoned him with phenol injection into his veins. The one who sacrificed his life was a priest. His name was Maximilian Kolbe. The Germans sent him to Auschwitz for helping the Jews. Maximilian Kolbe was canonized by the Pope John Paul II. That's the reason we keep cell number 18 open. A lot of Catholics who come to see Auschwitz know the story. They ask about this particular place to show them. It's cell number 18, the first open which you've seen in the basement of block number 11. When the war was over, he was in hiding in Germany. He himself was German. They found him in 1946. He was sent to Poland, put on the Polish trial in Warsaw, found guilty, sentenced to death, and then they brought him back to Auschwitz to be hanged in that gallows. That gallows was built just for him, for the camp commandant Rudolf Huss. Yes, because his youngest boy was born in 1950.
Gas chamber.
In September of 1941, after the first experiment with cyclone B in the basement of block number 11, they drilled a few holes in the ceiling of the execution place and the gas chamber was built. It was the first gas chamber at Auschwitz. They still did not have much experience with killing people in the gas chambers. The first one looked different than the gas chambers they built later on, so different than the model which you can see. The first one had no showers and dressing room. They made everybody to leave the clothing outside. Standing by the entrance, people were told about disinfection which awaited them before they go to the camp. They were coming into this room naked. When the last person went in, the doors closed, the light was turned off, holes in the ceiling opened, cyclone B dropped in, and the engine of the motorcycle standing by the gas chamber started to make a noise, to drown down the screaming of those who were dying. More than 10,000 people were killed here. The first ones to be killed in this gas chamber were prisoners of war. Others were Polish Jews brought to Auschwitz from the camp vicinity. Have the bodies of those who were killed in such camps. I can already tell you, people knew about them. What made Auschwitz ovens exceptional was their capacity. But the ovens in this part of Auschwitz were built right after the camp was set up, so in time they did not even think about the gas chambers. So comparing with Auschwitz II, it was a very small crematorium with a very low capacity. But over 70,000 corpses were burned in the ovens in this part of Auschwitz. When the ovens at Auschwitz II were finished, the ones here were dismantled. So what you see in front of you is recreation. The bricks are not original, all iron parts of the ovens are the same. Using such trolleys, the bodies were pushed into the oven, 2, 3 at a time. After 20 minutes, half an hour, they were only the bones. Most of the bones were put on the trucks dumped into the rivers, fish ponds, or they crushed them on powder, used human ash as fertilizer at the farms which belonged to the camp. This is the only gas chamber and the only crematorium still standing in Auschwitz. The building was not destroyed like the rest of them because till the end the Germans thought about the camp itself being bombed by the Allies. And this building, situated close to the camp commandant house, administration barrack, was a hiding place for the SS men when that chemical factory was bombed by the Allies.
is the main gate at Auschwitz Birkenau 2. This is where the train comes in.
Okay. And people from the point group are asked to go downstairs and join your guide, foreign people. So now we are on the grounds of Auschwitz of the victim of at the end of 1941, before
Some of those camps were for women, some for the men. They had the hospital here, which the prisoners called the waiting room to the gas chambers. The camp storages in the forest where belongings of the Jews killed in the gas chambers were kept. 2 transitory camps in which they made the prisoners to wait for their transport to the camps in Germany. So not everyone who was taken to the camp was working. Many of them were only waiting for one more train to be sent to another camp. And they had also 2 family camps here, men, women and the children kept together. Both of them were set up for propaganda purpose. Life in the family camps was easier than in the rest of the camp and easier than in the camp they were coming from. And they were writing the letters to their relatives about the good living conditions at Auschwitz. And the letters made their families believe that nothing bad awaited them at Auschwitz. Then people were coming with the postcards they had received from Auschwitz, and with the postcard they were going straight to the gas chambers. Then those who were writing the letters were killed in the gas chambers. In the meantime, new transports arrived at the camp, new families were chosen, and everything started again. And they had new people to be missing. You should remember from the pictures, the big ones which you've seen, the gas chambers were at the end of the lines. We see one of them at the end of that fence. They were all destroyed before the liberation. They are not standing there anymore. One of them was set on fire by the prisoners. The others were dynamited by the Germans. In the picture we don't see the railway lines. To remind you, till spring of 1944 the trains did not enter the camp, but they stopped on the way from Auschwitz I to Auschwitz II. You could see them coming here down the bridge, the lines. In 1944, especially for Hungarian Jews, because so many of them were to come in a short time to speed up the whole process of killing, they connected the first unloading platform with the gas chambers by building the lines in the middle of the camp. It was only in 1944 that trains entered the camp. 3 trains could come at a time. Where the post is sticking from the ground, the selections took place. And to remind you, 6 years ago, standing by the train in the middle of the camp here, they did not see so many chimneys sticking from the ground, but they saw the camp, they saw the barracks. So everything around them made impression that they had been sent to the labor camp. And there was no reason not to believe that after the shower they would have been taken to the camp. Why not, if you see the camp on both ways. What we have come to see was the camp toilet. The prisoners did not sleep in this barrack. By the entrance, they had a washroom. It comes from the testimonies of those who survived. Water for the prisoners in the whole camp here was not purified. Even a few drops of such water made you sick. 6 prisoners were killed in the gas chambers. The prisoners were losing instinct of washing themselves, realizing they were endangering their lives going to the camp washrooms. They depended on raining water and snow in winter. Most of the prisoners in the camp suffered from hunger diarrhea. They needed going to the toilet more than 10 times a day. There was no medicine to help them. The only ones who could come here at any time they had to were the supervisors and toilet cleaners. The rest of the prisoners could come here twice a day. Once in the morning before the roll call, once in the evening after the roll call. The toilet of this size had to be enough for almost 2,000 people. 1 hour and a half in the morning and the same in the evening. No privacy. The prisoners got used to the fact that they had no privacy. It was the way to have them humiliated. When they were waiting for their turn, they were exchanging news, celebrating all kinds of festivals according to their religion. But first of all, this part of Auschwitz were made from wood, and wood came from Germany. They were freezing in winter time. In summer time, when the barrack was closed and the skylights were not open, it was almost impossible to push. In spring, autumn time, when it was raining, everything turned into mud, because till the end they had no floor under the beds. They had concrete around the heater, and in the room for the supervisors, which used to be by the entrance. The supervisors, to remind you, were the prisoners. The SS men never stayed with the prisoners in the same barracks. They had the barracks for themselves outside the camp. High-ranking officers lived in town of Auschwitz with their families, wives and children. They replaced them from time to time. They never stayed in the same camp a long time. The prisoners in the camps did not have much time to have their faces memorized. That's why it was quite easy for them to vanish when the war was over. The survivors of the camps always remember the face of the camp commandant, a few high-ranking officers, a few doctors, that's all. The rest of them looked identical for them, clean and elegant. It was very easy for them to vanish when the war was over. Change their identities. Prisoners had been sent to the camps in Germany, where in spring of 1945 they were freed by the Americans or British. So most of Auschwitz survivors were not liberated at Auschwitz, but in the camps in Germany. They sent them to other camps for work. To remind you, even today, after so many years, wherever you are, it's very easy to have the survivors of Auschwitz recognized. They are the only ones with camp numbers after. 2 years after this place was opened to public. Since 1947 it's been open to public. It would not have been done earlier because for almost 2 years the Soviets who liberated Auschwitz kept German prisoners of war in the same barracks. When the prisoners of war camp was closed down, this place was open too. And now we are going back to your bus. This is the end of your tour with me. Thank you very much for your kind attention and listening. Have a very nice time in Poland. Let's go back.
forget I'm filming. Keep it is.
Filming, aye.